questions on digitalization and liberal principle, and to the launch of our campaign to strengthen human rights online. But especially welcome to our two panelists, Commissioner Vestager and journalist Ressa. We are so happy that exactly the two of you are with us today. Let me first say some typical housekeeping rules. You will be asked to put your microphones off, to mute them, as we say, and to turn off the cameras as well. A recording of the discussion will be made that I want to announce, and you can put questions through Facebook. Jason Fraser and our secretariat will be monitoring your questions that will be put to the panelists. And of course, it's very welcome to comment over Twitter using the hashtag. My name is Astrid Thors. I'm the chair of the Human Rights Committee of Liberal International, but also a former parliamentarian, both European and national, in the Parliament of Finland. Liberal International is, as you know, a global organization of liberal parties and organizations with activities on all the continents of the world. We have two committees, the Climate Justice Committee and the Human Rights Committee. The older one is the Human Rights Committee, and it is actually the only Human Rights Committee working in a political international organization like ours. Let me say something first about the campaign and its background. Radikale Venstre, the Social Liberal Party of Denmark, and Liberal International wish to illustrate and explain what human rights online mean and why it is important to protect them. We did a survey in Liberal International and saw that the majority of our member parties did not have a policy on digitalization and human rights. That's why we started this activity. The campaign will strive to raise awareness of digital rights and, of course, also to increase the knowledge among decision makers. We have been working and elaborating 10 liberal principles for digitalization and human rights, and I'm very happy to say that through the policy labs we have had, the work is well underway. I can little bit mention some of the principles that we are working with. Of course, we are stressing that rights should be equally respected online as offline. This is a challenge, but this must be the goal. There must be access to digital services and communications for everyone. The digital divide is not acceptable. We ask for transparency, accountability, and comprehensibility in the use of data and of artificial intelligence. So we have had work well underway despite COVID-19. And of course, we are very much aware of the threat to democracies. And I can say that we started this work before the events on 6th of January in Washington, something that made maybe more people really aware of all the threat that is with disinformation and misuse of digital communications. But no principles are valuable if not spread and debated. And that's why we are so grateful for the support of Radikale Venstre for our work and for this campaign. And also for the participation of Commissioner Vestager today, enabling us to start really the public part of the work. Once more, Executive Vice President of the Commission, Margrethe, you are very welcome. Commissioner Vestager is well known among European liberals as you were our lead candidate in the EP elections 2019. Now you are one of the Commission's 3 executive vice presidents with responsibility for competition, but also for a Europe fit for the digital age. You were also previously Commissioner, then also responsible for competition, or the competition czar, as was mentioned, and made you feared by many big firms. You have had an impressive career in Danish politics both leading the Radikale Venstre and being minister, among other subjects, for economics and for education, one of the most important fields. But let me also, in a lighter tone, say Mrs. Commissioner, that for us from the north of Europe, you are Margrethe, the Prime Minister in the famous series Borgen, dealing with politics in Denmark. So that's you receive that you were the model for Margrethe in that. But let me be serious. In mid-December, the EU Commission, under your leadership, introduced draft pieces of important legislation, the Digital Service Act and the Digital Markets Act, updating principle, actually introduced at the turn of the millennium. As we can see, digitalization is on every strand of our society. It has brought enormous benefits, and without that, maybe the COVID-19 would have been even more terrible. But we can also find disinformation, as we mentioned, and we have situations where some big operators know all about us, and advertising is totally different today. As Ressa said in an earlier event hosted by Liberal International, we are seeing a real-time experiment with us as human beings. And so much power is in the hand of the big firms. Is it time to take back control to the public authorities, or is that detrimental? That's one of the questions we always ask ourselves as liberals. And Commissioner Vestager, will the draft pieces of legislation answer these concerns? Can Europe also in this field be a leader and setting the marks and be the light? How is it, Commissioner Vestager? The floor is yours. Thank you very much for participating with us.
Well, Astrid, thank you very much for this introduction, and thank you for making this happen. I feel that it's the other way around. It's really an honor for me to participate with Maria Ressa, making it concrete and specific what we are talking about in her very important work. I'm so thankful for that. And second, that Liberal International is the framework and the fertile ground for the continued work for human rights, also when our world is changing. You have such a long experience. You engage so many people in making the fight for human rights in real life a thing, not just some convention, not just some words, but something in everyday life. And that will be my starting point, because when I got the responsibility to be Executive Vice President responsible for Europe Fit for Digital Age, I was thinking, what is this? Because for me, the important thing is to enable us to use technology in the best possible way to create the societies that we want to have. And I see so many opportunities for us to use technology to fulfill some of the many promises that were given, but never fulfilled. It could be a promise of an inclusive society where you do not feel left out if you are in a weakened social position, if you live in a deserted area, but that you really feel included in your democracy. It can be the promise of access to world-class education for everyone without exception, if you have the talent and work for it. It can be the promise of access for everyone for world-class healthcare. So what we are having is an enormous opportunity to make our societies better. The point, of course, is that with every opportunity comes huge risks. And what we see quite a lot is that these risks, they materialize. It is not just theory, it is a real thing. Because what we see is that there is a risk of our democracy being privatized totally fragmented into our own little spaces in our own feed, with no contradiction, no fact-checking, no flowering of different opinions. And democracy needs open public spaces where everyone feels that you can come with your opinion without the fear of retaliation, in order for criticism and ideas and innovation and discussion and compromise and finding solutions can take place. And this is that threat right now. Second, as we saw in the US just 2 weeks ago, an attempted coup was planned in the open using social media. So the threats are not theory. And the last thing is not about democracy as such, but about identity. Do we see and recognize ourselves as citizens, as people who can take action, as people who make choices? Or do we feel de facto more and more as little pieces in a technological machinery where we basically are being reduced to the products? This is the background for what we have been doing in Europe now for actually quite some time. Because the GDPR, the privacy rules, this is basically the starting point of digital citizens' rights. And it comes from a vision of one world, not sort of the old physical world being the world, but that the world will evolve, but as one world with digital as well as physical sides, but that it must come together because it's one democracy. And these digital human rights, they were, I think, a very important starting point in democracy catching up with technology, and democracy setting the course as to how we want to use technology and what societies we want to shape. This is the right to be forgotten. This is the fact that you own your data. It is the fact that you can choose whether or not you want to be tracked. The next steps are equally important because they are steps that makes exactly responsibility and accountability the core. We have discussed for decades and agreed on what is illegal offline. That should be the same thing online. Excitement to violence, excitement to terror, child abuse, the things where everyone agrees we don't want this. The Digital Services Act will make sure that this will be taken down. But the second point is that what is legal offline is also legal online. The two things will have to mirror one another. And this is why it's really important that the Digital Services Act gives a responsibility for platforms to set up a mechanism so that if your posts are taken down or if they consider banning you from using the services, that you have the right to appeal. And if things cannot be sorted with the service provider, that you have an independent place to go in order to set things right. Because none of these things can happen without these processes. And for my colleagues, it has been really important that these are the processes of democracy, of interaction, and not for the state to interfere, to say, must go, can stay. A number of my colleagues grew up on the other side of the Iron Curtain. They are forever vaccinated against any kind of ministry of truth. And this is also why we don't want the upload filters. Of course, we realize that it's more troublesome to have interaction and processes, but the troublesome part is also the investment in a real democracy where people are seen as who they are. And the last thing, two more things that I will mention, is the second proposal that we tabled, which is called the Digital Markets Act. Because the thing about the market is that it is not just sort of an economic factor that you can isolate. The fact that we also in our role as consumers, can make choices is also part of securing our democracy. Back in the days, the founders of the European Union, they saw very clearly the negative effects of the monopolies of the 30s, how they have played a role in the running up to the Second World War. And this was why they reined in monopolies in our competition law. Because we need the competition law to rein that in, and we need, as consumers, with every choice we make, we have a say. And this is also what the Digital Markets Act will do. It is to rein in those who keeps the gates of the marketplace and minimizes our free choice as consumers in order to put obligations on those who keeps the gates of the different markets. The number of things that you cannot do, the number of things that you must do. For instance, that you cannot just take data, that you cannot use your strong position in one market to leverage yourself in another market. Because the thing is that in an open, liberal economy, in strong democracies as we want to live in, we need an open marketplace as well as an open democracy. Last but not least, it only works if it works in real life. And obviously, here we still have ways to go. I think many people are still somewhat frustrated with the GDPR, with their digital citizens' rights, saying, okay, great that I have rights, but how to exercise those rights? And here we, of course, need the double response of the marketplace giving us services with privacy as default, with our choice as sort of the main goal in the service provision, but also that authorities work together and that we work together globally, because this is not a European discussion, this is a global discussion. And since we do not have sort of a global authority, we need to work much more together. And we also need, in order for these rights to be real, to make sure that we have the media plurality that allows for us to know whether it is real or not. Because only with the reporting, the critical reporting, the fact checking, can we make sure that this works. Of course, as any other politician, I appreciate that I can be in touch with people directly on Twitter or other social media. But I am obliged to stand up to critical scrutiny of journalists, because this is of the essence. And this is why it's not only a question of rights and new rules, it is as important to make sure that they work in real life on an everyday basis. And this, I think, is one of the things that where liberals really stand out for this empowerment in everything we do, with the integrity and the dignity of every one of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Margrethe. That were fantastic introduction in the liberal circles and mentioning so many ideas that are dear to us. And also, I'm very happy that Maria is a journalist who is scrutinizing exactly in the way that you are mentioning. And because Maria Ressa, the next panelist, is, as some of us know, very well-known journalist, has set up the big news site Rappler in the Philippines, has been the head of the CNN bureau in Manila, but she also personally knows what it means to be the target of fake news, the target of libel accusation, how it is to work in an authoritarian society, being exactly also the target of the trolls of the Duterte regime. As Maria mentioned some months ago, she is accused of so-called crimes that would lead up to 100 years in prison. And she's courageously fighting against misinformation, despite that, in the courts and in other places. But she's also has been part of the initiative, the Real Oversight Board of Facebook, which challenges how Facebook is working today. And she has been, for her investigative journalism, she has been awarded by National Democratic Institute And even by the Swedish Pen last year, I noticed a Tucholsky Prize. So congratulations, Maria, for that. So, Maria, how do you feel about the principles that, how will they work in practice, what the Commissioner mentioned? Please, Maria, the floor is yours, and I hope you are with us now, still somewhere far away in Manila in a difficult place. Please, Maria.
I found Wi-Fi, and first of all, Commissioner Vestager, please know that we are watching your work with bated breath. It is some sense of writing the upside down world, but I guess I'll just start with 3 points, and I know you know these, but it's different when you're the one that comes under attack. Astrid, since the last time we spoke, I've received 2 more criminal charges, 2 more arrest warrants. I posted bail for my 10th arrest warrant a week and a half ago, my 10th in less than 2 years. This is now kind of part of the pollution of the world I live in, the same way that all of the lies in our information ecosystem that is global in scope is part of the pollution, and it should not be that way. I think the 3 points I'll make is that here's the reality that we're living in, right? We talk about information as if it is something outside of us. I became a journalist because I know information is power. And yet the world's largest distributor of news, of facts, Facebook, social media, have now created a business model that rules them, something Shoshana Zuboff calls surveillance capitalism. And that has driven incentives for them over the last 4 years to make the distribution platform of news a behavior modification system. So this is technology and money coming together to give more engagement for the platforms, more manipulation for the consumer, right? And I think, the way we've seen it, the way I've seen it play out is that this kind of bottom-up attacks of users, people all around the world will post. And when they post, they don't quite realize that there is a machine that is creating a model of them, a model that is them, knows their decisions better than they do, knows us better than we know it ourselves, and then takes that artificial intelligence, then takes all of that and serves our moment of vulnerability, whether it is to a company advertising, the new advertising, or to a country propaganda. And we are served up. How we react to that continues in the perpetual machine that we are now part of. I joke, Real Facebook Oversight Board, another member, Roger McNamee, who was one of Silicon Valley's first investors in Facebook, he jokes that this is the Truman Show. I go a step further. I say we now live in the Matrix, and we don't know that we're being manipulated. So this is insidious manipulation. But here's the second part, which is, what does it do to us, right? The reality is that the algorithms that are now powering our lives with these, the hardware that we carry with us that is very intimately connected to us, starting in 2016, and here's a study that was published by Science magazines, lies laced with anger and hate spread faster and further than facts. So the platforms that distribute the news are biased against facts. They are emotional, they are thinking fast platform, they manipulate emotionally. The more emotional, the angrier we get, the more money they make, right? So if it's biased against facts, think about what our world is like without facts. Without facts, we can't have truth. Without truth, we can't have trust. Without any of these three, we can't have democracy. And then that's only the first part of what it does, right? The next part is, not only does it divide us, and I've seen that happen in the Philippines, it pulls us, if you're pro-Duterte, you move further right in order to grow your network. If you're anti-Duterte, you move further left. And over the last 4.5 years, we see this divide happening. But it's not just dividing society, it is also radicalizing society. And that is what we saw play out in Capitol Hill on January 6th. Right? This is a logical conclusion of the lack of inaction to all of the danger signals, to all of I'm a Facebook partner. Did I mention that? Rappler, Commissioner Vestager, you also work for small and medium scale enterprises, right? We are we're in an SME company here, and we're a Facebook partner. We're a fact-checking partner, a thinking slow process for a thinking fast distribution. So it doesn't work. I think the last part that I'll say, because I would love to hear more, advice that you would have, because these bottom-up attacks happen, then top-down. If you live in a country like mine, or if you live in the United States, right? Let's stop the steal. President Trump's, someone stole the election narrative. Well, it was a meta-narrative that was seeded on social media by, not surprisingly, Russia Today, RT, a year earlier, August 2019, mainstreamed by Steve Bannon on YouTube, embedded in Facebook groups, and then it comes a year later, top down from President Trump. You can see how Americans have been radicalized, right? They do play with our issues of identity. They play with the worst of human nature, and all of that is monetized. So I think content and money are combined. These are not, I'm reading through both the Digital Services Act and the Digital Markets Act, and I think that these are the technology is so strong. And then I guess I'll end with E.O. Wilson, this American biologist who framed our problem so well. He said, what we are dealing with is our Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. So you have this amazing power to help us. In the last 4 years, 4.5 years, since 2016, I've been a journalist by this year, 35 years. I have never had all of the protection of being a journalist stripped away. And that's exactly what has happened, both online and in the real world. And I'll end with just this thought, which is that what is virtual is real. What is, it isn't separate. These are, and again, to echo Commissioner Vestager, if it is illegal in the real world, it should be illegal in the virtual world. And the fact that huge companies we praise have gotten away with genocide in Myanmar, for example, with enabling the rise of populist authoritarians who then use the levers of democracy to strip away protections for journalists around the world. It is happening in more than, I think, the Oxford University's Computational Propaganda Research Project. They just came out with their report that says that it is in at least 80 countries around the world today. And what is it? Cheap armies on social media rolling back democracy. I think it's an existential moment. I think we have to treat it like we did 75 plus years ago when the atom bomb went off. The entire world needs to come together and protect humanity from the worst of what humanity can do. Because if we don't have facts, we don't have shared realities, then how can we solve the world's greatest problems? All human endeavor becomes impossible. It's not too late, and we are watching you very closely, and I hope you do it fast enough. So, I joke with Facebook that if they did, and this was like 3 years ago, I said, if you don't do something, I could go to jail. And I can, right? But they didn't do anything. Anyway, the US elections did force the social media platforms to do something. I just hope they do it in every country around the world.
Thank you, Maria. And we can see that you are very much on the same page, Commissioner Vestager, and you, that it's a crucial moment. How can we protect humanity? And I can note that we have got already questions in the chat function, and one of them coming from Charlotte Burgess at Radikale Venstre, and I would like to give priority to her question, is that how can we exactly truly get a global governance on the internet? I mean, it's a little bit because, as you say, Maria, we need to protect humanity, and we need to protect our democracies. So I would put the question to Commissioner Margrethe Vestager. What is your sentiment on the let's say, the chances of get a truly global governance without giving too much power to the states? As you mentioned, Commissioner, that this is something that you would not wish the states to have the prerogative to have filters and other things. And there is exactly the balance that we have to strike. On the other hand, we know that some of the colleagues in Maria's real Facebook oversight board have said that it's time to take back to the state, to the public authorities, some of, let's say, the powers that is now lying with the big firms. So Margrethe, your reactions to Maria's comments and to the question, please.
Well, thank you very much, Maria, for your comments. It works very strongly because of your experience. And it is really thought-provoking what you say, that you have been working as a journalist for 35 years, and only now the prerogative, which is actually a global agreement for journalists, they are being revoked. And I think that's it's a very concrete way of showing this sense of urgency that we have. For me, the Cambridge Analytica scandal, the role that Facebook have played in some countries where basically people don't think about the internet, they think Facebook is the internet. That has been, things have been sort of the wake-up calls with no snooze. There's no way that you can just, go away, I need half an hour more. No, it's now. And the thing is that we don't have global authority in this, but we have changed the debate over the last 5 years. The debate is really different. When I first started, my job as competition commissioner, and I was walking up and down the hill in the US, they were kind of, what? Mm-hmm. These are good companies. What are you thinking about with your Google cases? And that has changed a lot. It has also changed in the US population. It has changed all over the planet. You see the reports in Australia, in Canada, in Japan, in so many countries. And by the time of the GDPR, the Digital Citizens Right, Europe was very much ahead, but set kind of a global standard for privacy. And that has inspired, I think, all over the planet. The good thing now is that with the Digital Markets Act and the Digital Services Act, Europe is still in the lead, but the distance to the coming ups is not so big. And I think that's it's really inspiring, and it's an encouragement for us to get it right and to do it fast in order to keep inspiring that global debate, because we cannot change this without changes in legislation. There is no such thing as self-correct. As Maria explained it, I think some of the economic forces of the business models, they are so strong that it's not possible for businesses to revert without society coming and say, we need to do something else. I also know that both the OECD, but also UN, been very active in this with a UN technology envoy in order to create a global understanding of what we're dealing with. And I think these are good progress, because when we don't have a global authority, well, then we have to cooperate between authorities with one goal. And here, of course, the work with human rights is so important because it has such a long history. Mm-hmm. It has been such a long fight, and it is so acknowledged that human rights is something that we agree on, that we fight for, that we try to implement in everyday life, that when we connect the digital transition to the fight for human rights, there will be a recognition I think, everywhere on the planet. And that is what will allow us, I think, for Charlotte's question, to get a global sense of governance, exactly because the two things will merge in the coming years.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Commissioner. Could I also continue, because there was also a question for a little bit following up from a person called Christian Stockholm, who said that let's say that it seems that Google has really fierce, if I understood the question correctly, fierce opposition to your proposals. Is that the case? And when we are talking about, let's say it is universal, but is there a danger with this proposal? For instance, as you said, we have been grappling very long. What is acceptable freedom of speech and what is illegal content? And I saw in the proposal that what is illegal in a country has then been part of the procedures to be taken down. But how about if in Poland we will have more and more restriction, for instance, on gender-related rights? Will we have a situation where the authorities in Poland will be blocking, let's say, information about abortion and have the basis in the Digital Service Act? Margrethe, please.
No, thank you. Well, on the opposition, what we have seen over the last years is that the lobbying budgets in Brussels, I tell you, they have increased, which is of course a paradox, because, for instance, in the US hearings in Congress of the tech companies, most of them are asking for regulation. And if you take that face value, you say, well, here you go. Mm-hmm. And the other side of the coin, if you are a tech company, and I think they have to realize that now regulation is unavoidable, then better get something that is pan-European, potentially inspiring also what other countries will do outside of the European Union, so that you can deal with it, instead of having, a French, a German, a Danish, a Spanish, a Polish, a Hungarian that you will have to deal with. This may be not much of a comfort when regulation is coming, but there is a point in saying we need these rules to be common. And we have the encouragement from a number of member states in the European Union who works themselves on these issues. France advanced in the law Avia, Germany in the Netzgesetz. So you see it all over. And this is also why it's important to move forward. I think there will be opposition, yes. But for me, the important thing is, of course, to keep this balanced mind. On the one hand side, to have an open mind for criticism, for ideas that are better than the ones that we have tabled in our proposal, so that in the end, the co-legislature proudly can present something that will solve the problem to their satisfaction, and at the same time to do away with illegitimate lobbyism that is not serving the purpose of the proposals. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important to do both, not just to discard of any kind of criticisms, to say, oh, it's just lobbyism, because we need an open democratic process also about these proposals, and we need to work intensively in order to keep the momentum and to keep the speed. On the second question, on freedom of speech versus what is harmful and national legislation, this is, of course, one of the dilemmas that we face here. We are not touching the question of content because we don't want sort of the European part of our democracy to say this must go, this can stay. For instance, if you ask the Dane and the Swedes to agree, I think they would probably not. Even being neighbors and close to one another, in Denmark, that's quite a robust debate, while the Swedes are probably the most civilized people on this planet. So I think it's really important that we have space for for national specificities, even though I see that there is a kind of convergence. For instance, more and more countries make hate speech illegal against people with a connection to the LGBTQI plus environment. So there is a development as to what is illegal. But of course, there is a risk if a country says we want to outrule this completely, well, then platforms would be obliged. And that is one of the paradoxes here. One of the reasons why we would really want to maintain anonymity online is exactly because of this, so that you still have the option of criticizing without the direct fear of repercussions. The only thing we're asking is that you identify yourself as a person, because we have so many trolls and bots and what have you, where people will not even be behind, their screen as a body, but also then just as another machine. And then, we get even more estranged from what is ongoing. Of course, that within the European Union, to be a member, you have signed up for Article 2, which states the basics, and you will also have followed intensively our endeavor to make sure that we have the right tools if member states deviate from what they themselves signed up to in order to get full membership of the European Union.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And let me turn to Maria, because there's a question to you to follow up when you had the very compelling example of the nuclear bomb. How would you design such a discussion, such a forum? But maybe also, I would like to follow up from what Commissioner Vestager said in her initial part of the discussion, that we need to be citizens. And I think that there is also the question, Maria, how, when you mentioned, and we see how, in fact, different algorithms works, what would be your remedy to that? Because we need to come together. We need to try to also have a better situation for fact-checking, because the last couple of, let's say, months, we have been a little bit desperate with the fact-checking, that it doesn't get through. We have very good investigative journalists. We have people working together to try to convey the facts, and still they don't get forward. I don't know. I don't think this is a technological problem, but it is a societal problem. And maybe Maria, as a journalist, would like to continue the debate that Margrethe initiated about citizenship and to be citizens. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I'll pick up a few strands. Without shared facts, without a shared reality, right? The shared reality comes from shared facts. Without that, there is nothing. Journalism is under attack. That's kind of the first domino, because we're trying to hold power to account. The second domino is democracy dies. The third domino is, how are you going to deal with huge issues like this, but like the coronavirus, the vaccination that goes out. I mean, climate change, another one. This is a time when the world needs thinking slow processes, right? Ways to drain the emotions out so that we can work together from a lot of different perspectives, because that's the other thing that you need. And yet, our distribution platform of news is a thinking fast process, right? Again, go back to, they are biased against facts. Social media platforms which distribute the news are biased against facts. So I think that's the first one. I think the second one is, this is not a free speech issue. This is a distribution issue. Again, when news organizations were in charge of distribution, we were liable for both content creation and distribution. We also had a sense of standards and ethics. I like to ask that of the tech platforms all the time. What is, we protect the public sphere. That's part of a journalist's mission. Right now, the lack of that from technology has allowed the surveillance capitalism business model to push engagement to the point that human beings cannot have no defenses against it, and that it is the insidious manipulation is constant. To direct answer to the question, I think they're like Commissioner Vestager, you know, from 2016 to today, incredibly more sophisticated discussions. And I would be happy with that if I wasn't the one under attack. I'm under attack. I have like a runway, maybe a year before I truly have to go to jail. And in that time period, the poison of lies. So think about it like a virus again, right? Because if you're infected by the virus of lies, you're changed, you're diseased, you are impervious to facts. And we saw this play out again in the United States, right? And no matter who is president, the people who have been infected now need to be de-radicalized. So let me answer that question. So even though the conversation has become, the global conversation has become more sophisticated, you have initiatives like it started out as the Grand Committee on Data Privacy, Disinformation, and Democracy. That was when I testified, I think in 2018. And then now it is just the Grand Committee on Disinformation. It's 14 countries. I think it was Damian Collins who, out of the UK, they have an online harms bill. You know, they pulled members of parliament from different parts of the world, 14 different countries. Each of those countries have different cultures, different goals. You have a country like Singapore, part of it, right? But I think what the tech has shown us is that these differences of culture and nation are nothing compared to what we all have in common, which is our biology. We are all being manipulated very well on these platforms. Our data is being monetized. We are, regardless of culture. So there's that, but also I guess I'll go back to World War II. When the world had to come together to deal with this, there wasn't really a group. They formed it because they realized an atom bomb went off. And what did they do? We came out with Bretton Woods, with NATO, with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This is the kind of statesmanship that becomes necessary today. And I think you're seeing this all around the world. I think the last part, Commissioner Vestager, is that Cambridge Analytica, you mentioned this. Cambridge Analytica, the whistleblower, Chris Wiley, said the Philippines was a petri dish, his word. We were the petri dish where Cambridge Analytica and its parent company, SEL, the company before it, SEL, tested tactics of mass manipulation in countries like ours in the global south. And then when it worked, they ported, that's a direct quote, ported it over to America, to you. We're just the guinea pigs. So as early as 2016, I actually said, look at what is happening to us because it is coming your way. Our dystopian present is your future and it's come to pass. I don't think it's too late yet, but we need to have this sense of urgency. We need to create new bodies. In the absence of one body, I mean, Commissioner Vestager talked a little bit about what is happening country to country, but I'll add one thing on the Australia law, right? This is from friends inside these companies, because the giant tech companies. What they say is that the law seems to try to protect the status quo of legacy media organizations. So that's another strain that you're going to have, right? The whole world has transitioned online. Just in Southeast Asia alone, a Google Temasek Bain study last year showed that during the time of pandemic, 400 million new consumers went on the internet because of the pandemic, 400 million in Southeast Asia alone. What kind of world will we create for that? It's going to be the same one that we have. It's now grown significantly. This has just exponentially grown. So whatever actions we need to take, we must take it sooner rather than later. And I think light of fire, an atom bomb exploded. And I'm sorry, not that I don't have a concrete action, a concrete response to you for there, except in the absence of it, someone from the Netherlands, Margrethe, who used to be with the EU Parliament, and I were co-chairs of a group that actually came out with policy recommendations, right? Let's stop the whack-a-mole approach of dealing with the poison, the virus in our information ecosystem. We came out with 12 kind of systemic goals for a solution, and then 250 tactical moves. Rappler is a startup. We're 9 years old now, so I guess we're not a startup anymore. But part of the reason we've survived this, and part of the reason I can talk to you with authority, some sense of authority in this, is because we map the networks of disinformation. That was why I started ringing the alarm bells in 2016. And what we are seeing in the Philippine information ecosystem is that our Facebook ecosystem has been taken over by propaganda, by the 8th wave of disinformation networks. And just September last year, September 22, Facebook took down influence operations, information operations. Both of them were attacking me and Rappler. You know, one was Filipino, connected to the police and military. The other was Chinese. It was from China. It was taken down because it was creating fake identities for the US elections as well, using AI photos. It was also not just attacking me, it was attacking other human rights activists and already campaigning for the presidential election in 2022 of the daughter of President Duterte. I'm just saying all of this directly connects to geopolitical power. And so if you don't stop it quickly, even geopolitical power is affected, will be determined by this.
Thank you, Maria, very, very much. And I don't know how the commissioner's timetable is, because there was still questions, but I think we need to wrap up. And I just can say that we could go on for very, very long. And the compelling examples you have, Maria, they are so just compelling and important for us to listen to. And on a liberal note, let me also say that we continue to follow the fate of the former Minister of Justice, Senator De Lima, in the Philippines, who really has been also in traditional ways attacked. But let me conclude by thanking both of you, Commissioner Vestager, Margrethe, and you, Maria Ressa, because I think what you so well conveyed to us is the sense of urgency, but also the sense of hope, and that there are some remedies. And I also find so important in your speech, Margrethe, the traditional liberal values, the esteem for the journalism that needs to be there. And I am also certain that you, as a former Minister of Education, know what needs to be done, because still there is, even though we are a little bit pessimistic about fact checks, but when you start early education, that might also helps, giving young people the tools, and sometimes they are better than we elderly to unravel what is happening behind the scenes in reality. But Commissioner, if I don't see you at the moment, but of course, if you want to have the last word, you will have it. Please, Margrethe.
Well, thank you very much. I am indeed still here, and I will concur with you. It is really important what Maria is telling us, because these examples show again that this is not theory. It is real everyday life on this planet. And we are part of it because we are all connected. And exactly this being connected is one of the things that we should also be aware of, because there's been attacks on the very protocol of the web. In the International Telecommunications Union, proposals basically to turn the web upside down. So instead of this decentralized, basically ungovernable network that allows for the use of this network for things that are not authorized by the state, some has been trying to turn that upside down to make it a centralized network. So far, that has been fought. We are a coalition of countries who do not want this to happen. But it's important to be aware that it is everywhere there is a fight for an open, fact-based democracy, also in the very workings of the internet. And the last thing that I will say is that it is never, ever too late to gain digital literacy. I think they say, it may be an urban myth, but I think they say that it's the 60 plus who are the most prone actually to pass on fake news. Because they say, oh, wow, what is this? I must tell my friends, they need to know. And then it spreads. So I think it's really important that we take sort of the tradition that we have in the Nordic countries for saying, learning, oh, that is a lifelong endeavor. We really need to get there because of democracy, because of bridging the digital divide, but also because amazing things can happen. If one is in one's 70s, well, over the next 20 years, digitization will move ahead, as it has done the last 20 years, where it has been a revolution. You know, the big companies that we're talking about, they hardly existed 20 years ago. And this is why it's really important that everyone is part of learning how to deal with this and forming their own opinion. Because not only will one use digital services, but one will also vote. Till the very last day, one can vote and be part of shaping our society, also when it comes to digital. And this is why this endeavor is so important. And this is why I was really happy about this initiative, and I've been really happy to be here, because it's an inspiration to know that Ressa, Maria is there, but also to know that you're there, part of the civil society, making sure that this is not a pinpoint here or pinpoint there, but it is indeed an international, it's a global endeavor. So thank you very, very much for this.
Thank you, Margrethe, and certainly it has been such an inspiration for us. But I hope you don't find I have a tendency to want to have the last word, but I can just say that during the work Liberal International did last year and this year, we can see also how many new civil society initiatives there are and drive this discussion. And I feel it's very, very important for Liberal International to be connected to Access Now, to be right on the right con and other spheres where this lifelong learning happens and where we can increase the knowledge and keep also the right balance between public authority and you know, citizens initiatives, protection of the journalism, education and so on. So thank you very much. The only concern I have is that people are not yet really have the, you know, ownership still of the data, that digital rights that you also mentioned in your introductory speak. But I think that comes, you know, when they will start study the Digital Markets Act and when they see different initiatives in the world to improve the ownership of your own information. So thank you very, very much, and happy, let's say, that we will continue to have a better 2021 and all the success with your proposals, fast approval in the Commission, in the European Parliament and the Council, so that we can be the star and have good discussions also over the Atlantic, because as you say, there are new things happening there as well. And to Maria Ressa, keep safe, stay tuned with us, because you have a big international community that's following you, and really. So thank you for participating with us, both of you. Thank you very much.